I didn't go there for the money. Not for the house, not for the jewelry, not for the goddamn china set my grandmother cherished as if it were made of Moses gold. I came because it was my family. Or at least what was left of it. I baked the same blueberry pie from my grandmother's recipe with crumbly sprinkles and a hint of cinnamon, because I knew she'd love it. I chose a dress to match her favorite curtains so I wouldn't stand out. And I stood on that porch with a box in my hands like a proper granddaughter coming to say goodbye. Only no one was in any hurry to open the door. Tom opened the door. My brother. Or, as he liked to say now, senior family manager. Whatever that meant. He looked at me like I was the mailman with the wrong address. No hello. Not even a, how are you? Just a dry one. You're here. As if he expected me to burn up on the way. I nodded, clenched my fingers on the lid of the container, and walked inside. The house smelled of apple cider vinegar, rotten grudges, and unspoken conversations. Everyone was there. My mom, Lauren, my aunt and uncle, even a cousin who seemed to have long since vanished from the horizon. And they all pretended like I wasn't there. I put the pie on the table. No one turned around. No one even raised an eyebrow. I stood there like a guest at someone else's wedding, not knowing what to do. But the worst part wasn't the silence. It was the indifference. You know, the kind of silence that rings in your ears. It's like you're screaming on the inside and it's like dust on the outside. Would anyone like some pie? I asked quietly. We ordered cheesecake, Lauren replied without even turning around. But thank you. Thank you. So much for crossing 2 states to be near me. Getting on that musty bus, lugging bags, sleeping in a cheap motel to say, I remember. And the answer was thank you. Thin as a toothpick stuck in your heart. During dinner, no one asked me a single question. I sat in a folding chair against the wall because all the main seats were already taken. My mom looked past me like I was a reflection on glass. Lauren was telling some funny story in which I was apparently an extra. I reached for my salad, and suddenly the plate was moved a little closer to me. Without a word. Just removed access. You know, that's not even rude. It's worse. It's a signal. You're not in. And then it sounded like this. Lauren clinked her glass and cheerfully announced. Tomorrow at 3 o'clock at the notary's. Everyone remember? Everyone nodded. Someone made a note on their phone. I blinked. Tomorrow what? I asked. The will, Mom answered. It was as if the word had collapsed. Without ceremony. Without a look. Just will. I nodded silently. And then, gathering my courage, I said, then I'll come too. That's when the silence became real. Not awkward. Not casual. The kind that smells like closed doors and keyless locks. Lavinia, Mom began softly, you should probably get some rest. It's a long drive after all. You've already made a gesture of goodwill. I'm part of this family, I said. Calmly. Clearly. We don't want conflict, Tom put in. Everyone just wants to close this out peacefully. Translation. We've already decided who gets what. Don't ruin the picture with your presence. I looked at them. All of them. These faces I'd shared Christmas with, Easter, old videotapes of our dances. They looked at me like I was a creditor who hadn't been called. I stood up. Didn't say a word. I knew if I opened my mouth I'd snap. And I wouldn't give them that luxury. Let them think they've won. Let them celebrate their silence. When I walked out, no one followed me. Not a single person. On the porch, leaving the pie container, I looked around. I realized I wasn't welcome here anymore. Maybe they never had. Irony. Please. I'm the one who drove my grandmother to the hospital when they were busy. I'm the one who called every Saturday even when no one called me. I am the one who held her hand when she cried in pain. But today I'm the extra. Because in their world, kindness is not capital. It's weakness. I walked away. Not for revenge. Not for pity. For myself. Because damn it, someone had to remember that I'm part of this story too. I didn't go back to the hotel right away. I just walked down the street, in the coat my grandmother had given me 6 years ago, with the pockets that always held cough candy and movie tickets. I was walking and one thought kept running through my mind. When exactly did I become a stranger? Not an enemy, not a traitor, just an outsider. There were familiar houses on the next street. In one of them lived Mrs. Jenkins, a friend of my grandmother's, The same one who always brought peach cobbler to church. I looked into the yard and saw that it was all overgrown. No one took care of it anymore. Neither had Grandma in the last few months. I remembered coming here that winter when Grandma broke her hip. Spent 24 hours scrubbing the floor, cooking, taking out the vessel. And no one showed up. Not Tom, not Lauren. They had important things to do, as usual. But now, when it was time to share, they were the first to sit at the table. As if on cue. When I finally got back to the hotel, there was deafening silence in the room. I sat on the bed and stared at one point. Then I pulled out the photo album my grandmother had given me the last time I'd seen her. On one of the pages was the two of us. I'm holding her hand, she's smiling. Handwritten signature. My girl. Always by my side. And I believed it. I wasn't going to fight. Not for them. But for that grandmother, yes. I knew that tomorrow I'd be in that office with their lawyers, their lists, their views. And let them think I was here for a handout. Let them. I came for memory. The truth. Something you can't sell or inherit. I went to bed without undressing. I kept the light on. It was important for me not to feel in the dark. Because darkness is what our family had become. And tomorrow when I walk in there, I will not be silent. Even if I'm the only one who says the truth out loud. I went outside an hour before the meeting. I was wearing the same coat, my hair was done, my face was makeup-free. Not because I was lazy, but because there was nothing to disguise. I'm me. And today I was going to go in there not as a guest, not as a burden, but as the person they crossed off too soon. I stopped at the coffee shop across the street. I ordered a simple Americano. The man behind the counter smiled, asked, "Whose name is the order in?" I said, "Lavinia." And for the first time in a long time the name came out without strain. No shadow. No falseness. I looked at my reflection in the window. And I realized, even if I walked in there and heard, "I don't need you again," I would still be me. Because being uncomfortable isn't a curse. It's freedom. And that's when I crossed the street. Not as a defendant. As an heiress. Not of their estate, but of her memory. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how it unfolded. I arrived 15 minutes before the start. Not out of impatience. Out of calculation. I wanted to be the first one in the room so I wouldn't have to walk in under their stares. Those fake, polite smiles that covered the knives in our family. The law office was in an old building with a shabby sign. No glitz, no ponchos. Just silence and a receptionist on duty with coffee in her hands, tired as the truth itself. I said, "Lavinia Hartman. I'm expected." She looked at the list, her eyes emotionless like an ATM machine. "All the others haven't arrived yet," she said. And then she added, as if in between, "Are you sure you're on the list? This is it. It started. Even here. Even here they've made their mark." But I just grinned. I'm sure of myself. That's enough. I sat down in the corner, my back against the wall. I always sit where I can see the exit. Not because I'm afraid, it's just a habit when you live in a house where there are whispers outside the door. After a few minutes, the others started to pull up. First Tom in his suit, phone to his ear like he was here for a deal. Then Lauren, all in black but carrying a $600 bag. And finally my mom. She walked in like a queen with her throne slightly in repair. She looked around the room, saw me and walked past me. Didn't even nod. Not the slightest movement on her face. And that's when I realized they knew I was coming. But they weren't planning on giving me a seat. The receptionist called us into the office. I went in first. Not out of pride, out of principle. They sat in a semicircle. I sat in the corner. No one moved a chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. In the center is the lawyer. A man in his 70s, with hands like a pianist's and a face that had seen too many family wars. He opened the folder and began to speak. His voice was even, without drama, but every word was like a nail. I, Betty Rose Hartman, being of sound mind. And off it went. The house, Lauren. Tom's collection. Savings to Mom. The old library to my uncle. I listened and didn't blink. Because I knew they'd hear my name last. Or not at all. And then he said, "And now a special order, written down in a separate form and delivered to me personally." The room grew quieter. Even Lauren stopped twirling the ring on her finger. If Lavinia comes, and she will because she has more conscience than the rest of us, give her this. He lifted the envelope. It was thick navy blue initialed. Mom snorted. Lauren grimaced. Tom stared at the floor. The lawyer walked over to me and placed it in the palm of my hand. It's yours. Betty Hartman had insisted. I felt the weight. Not physical, moral. It was a weight neither of them would want to carry. Because it was my grandmother's voice. Not notated, not written down, not formal real. And it was directed only to me. I put the envelope in my bag. I didn't open it. I just looked at them. They sat there like children caught in the act. But not because it was embarrassing, because it didn't work. And that's when Mom spoke up. I think it's unreasonable. We didn't know about the additional orders. That's not your concern, the lawyer said. Dryly. Without a smile. Mom wanted to say something, but she didn't. Perhaps for the first time in my life. As we walked out, I heard Tom mutter, "She was always a favorite." I turned around. "No, Tom. I was just there for you when you were busy." And I walked on. They stood by the car, as if discussing what to do about the fact that I existed. Mom didn't come up to me because she wanted to talk, because she couldn't afford to leave without trying to make a point. "You know," she said, looking past me, "Grandma has often been unstable in recent years. She probably did it out of pity." I almost laughed. Pity? That's what they're good at. Turning any kindness into weakness. People who didn't even show up when Grandma was in the room are now handing out diagnoses. If you think Grandma didn't realize who she trusted, I say calmly, then you might have a hard time explaining why she kept all her records with me. Not you. Not Lawrence. Me. Mom frowned. It wasn't anger, it was fear. Because in that moment she realized, I don't just have the envelope. I have a memory. The signatures. Photographs. The truth. "I don't want a war, Lavinia," she said quietly. "I just want it to be over. It's over. Today. When you tried to cross me out and you couldn't." She turned away. Just like that. No tears. No apology. Just silence. When they left, I sat down on a bench in front of the building. The envelope was in my bag, but I wasn't in a hurry to open it. It was that moment when everything in you screams, "This is the proof." But I took my time. Because I knew the most important thing had already happened. I stayed. I held on. I didn't let them destroy what my grandmother had kept. An elderly man walked by, looked at me and said, "They say old Hartman's will was made public today." The locals still remember her plowing the vegetable garden herself in her 80s. I smiled. Yes. And at 90 she still knew how to surprise. He nodded, not knowing who I was. But there was more respect in that simple phrase than there had been in the whole family for the last 5 years. I stood up, breathed in the cold air and walked. Not because I'd won, but because I no longer wanted to stand where I'd been ignored for years. When I got back to the hotel, it was quiet inside. Even the air conditioner seemed to be holding its breath. I sat on the bed, spread out in front of me everything I had in my bag. A notebook, an envelope, an old letter from my grandmother. My fingers trembled, but not from fear, the tension that hadn't gone away in years. I slowly opened the envelope. Inside was a note. My grandmother's handwriting was the same, clear as a ruler. She wrote to me as if she were talking. Every word as direct as a gunshot. "Lavinia, I know they won't understand. And you know they won't. But I know too who was there for you when no one came. This is for you. You didn't ask for it. So I left the most important thing to someone who didn't ask for it. No counting, no numbers. Just confession. Just honesty." I sat back down and stared at the wall. That was it. No money, no houses. Just the truth. And in that moment I realized they didn't lose because they didn't get something. It was because Grandma took away their last chance to say they were right. I didn't need to be called. I came anyway. They tried to cut me out. But I stayed. They didn't thank me. But I knew I wasn't doing it to be thanked. And that, strangely enough, was a victory. I got up, went to the mirror. I looked at my face. No makeup. Tired. But alive. It's not a weakness to be different. Being uncomfortable is, as it turns out, a privilege. Because at least you know where you end and other people's lies begin. I turned off the light. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of the dark. The next morning I got up at 6. I didn't even need an alarm clock. My inner tension had woken me up earlier. I went to the nearest coffee shop and ordered the bitterest black coffee I could find. The man at the register asked, "Sugar?" I grinned. No, I'd had enough of it yesterday. He laughed, not knowing how literal it was. I sat at the window and watched strangers walk outside. Some were in a hurry, some were chatting on the phone, some were arguing. And they all seemed closer to me than my family. Because at least they were real. I opened my notebook and started writing. Not a plan, not a complaint. Just thoughts. Because if I didn't let them out, they'd tear from the inside out. I'm not a victim. I am a witness. How silence can be louder than a scream. How indifference can be aggression. And how a person can be stronger simply because they don't want to be like the rest of us. When I got up, the sun was just starting to break through the clouds. It wasn't a new day. It was my day. Not because of them, but in spite of them. I headed for the exit. Calmly. Without expectations. No unnecessary words. And let them expect me to come for their attention. I came for respect. For myself. Because when you know your truth, you don't stand at the door. You walk in. This is the climax. Everything you've been waiting for is right here. Stay to see the hero put everyone in their place. I didn't open the box right away. You know when you have something important in your hands that could change everything, but you're not ready. Not because you're afraid. It's because inside you're already tired of surprises, even if they're in your favor. But on the third day toward evening I did sit down, spread the box out on the kitchen table, and just looked at it. It was heavy. And not from the weight from the past. A silver lid with the initials BRH. The little key was already lying inside. I knew if it was left in Grandma's room, it wasn't an accident. It meant Grandma wanted me to find it. But I knew they wouldn't just give it to me. So I came back. Not because I wanted to go through the whole circus again. It's because I'm not going to let them erase something that isn't even theirs. Lauren opened the door like I was bringing her the gas bill. What are you doing again? I need to get something. From Grandma's room. It's already organized, she mumbled. Mom said not to touch anything. It's about the box. Grandma left me a note. And the key. It's part of the furniture, she cut off. The dresser is mine. So is everything in it. I looked her in the eye and said what I'd wanted to say for a long time. Were you there when Grandma asked for water? She froze. Not because she remembered, but because she couldn't remember. Do you know where she kept her favorite brooch? Or how many heart pills she had for the day? Or the last time she'd had a good night's sleep? She didn't answer anything. I know. Because I was there. Because she held my hand when you didn't answer the phone. Because she said, "Don't tell anyone, just be there for me." And I was. Lauren pressed her lips together. The tension in her jaw gave everything away. She knew she was losing, but she was too proud to admit it. Okay, she muttered. But only for 5 minutes. Grandma's room was different now. Sterile. Like a hotel room after being cleaned. The bed made, everything arranged by color. Pictures taken off the wall. But in the corner a chest of drawers. The very same one. And a jewelry box under a glass dome. Like a museum piece that shouldn't belong to the living. I opened the lid. And there it was. A photograph. Old faded. I'm about 10 years old. Sitting on my grandmother's bed. Holding her hand. On the back is an inscription. The one who stayed when everyone else left. Underneath the photo is an envelope. Inside is the original document. Not a copy. It's a real will. Not notarized, personal. In it, my grandmother specified that in the event the others refused to recognize the moral side of the issue, her trust property, a closed family bank account, should pass to me. Individually. I felt a cold current run through my body. It wasn't just a gift. It was a position. A statement. Grandma knew they'd pretend I was nothing. She'd prepared herself. I looked up and saw Lauren in the doorway. She was looking straight at the papers. What's this? Your mirror, Lauren. Look at it all you want. She stepped closer. Are you going to produce this? It's unofficial. It won't go away. It'll go away enough to put a stop to it. Not in court. In the truth. She didn't say anything else. She just stood there. And for the first time in ages she didn't know what to say. I gathered the papers. I closed the box. And I walked past her like a draft. Light. Penetrating. But it didn't hold. It was sunny outside. It was hitting my eyes and I squinted, but not because it was bothering me. It was because for the first time in a long time I didn't care what anyone else saw. I knew that Grandma hadn't just left something behind. She was an affirmation. I was there for her. I stayed. And I was heard. And that's more than enough. I didn't think she'd show up on her own. But sure enough, she showed up, right by the car as I was about to leave. Mom. So focused, like she was the director of some exhibit where I was the exhibit, with a folder in her hands and a "we don't have problems, only you make them" look on her face. Lavinia, she said. Do you really think all this is going to make you feel better? There it was. Not "you're right." Not "I'm sorry." But "will it make you feel better?" Typical technique. Putting you in the position of an abused child, even when you're just defending yourself. No, I replied. It's not about feelings. It's about respect. She looked at me with an expression that was anything from tired, to annoyed, to slightly regretful. But no guilt. I realize you feel unappreciated, she began, as if she were reading from a manual for marriage and family therapists. But everyone had their own path. You chose yours. Yes, I said. I chose to be present. And you chose not to see. Mom exhaled. Not because I was wrong, but because it was hard for her that I wasn't being quiet again. Grandma loved you, she finally said. But love is not a possession. And indifference is not a defense, I parried. You closed your eyes when she was in pain. And now you want to close the door when someone else is. It doesn't work. She wanted to add something else, but she stopped talking. And I realized she did. She didn't admit it, she didn't apologize. But she understood. I left in silence. No tears. No theater. Because this chapter ended not with a stage, but with silence. The one where you're no longer afraid of not being heard. Because you've learned to speak out loud. Later, I was sitting in the kitchen of my house. I opened the box again. I took out the letter, the photos, the documents. I put them in front of me. And I didn't read them again. Because everything had already been said. Not by me, by her. You were there for me. Even when others only promised. That's it. That's the inheritance. Not money. Not family furniture. But the truth that you don't have to defend. Because it stands on its own. The next day I threw out old tickets, old notes. Even my grandmother's robe that I had kept since I was a teenager. Not out of indifference. But out of liberation. Because I no longer needed to cling to the past to prove to myself who I am. I know who I am. And now they know too. A week later I came back to town. Not for a meeting, not for a trial, not for another family meeting. I came to take back something that had long been mine, me. The one that had been hidden under resentment, silence, reticence. I walked the same streets. I saw the same bench where my grandmother fed the pigeons. I saw the same store where she and I had chosen silk scarves, even though she already had a dozen of them. Everything stayed where it was. Except for me. I went to church. Not to pray, to remember. She always said, if you can't forgive, don't pretend. But if you forgive once, do it for real. I sat in the back pew. I just sat there. No words. No thoughts. No struggle. And suddenly I realized I don't hold a grudge. Not at Lauren. Not at Tom. Or my mom. Because I'm not the loser in this story. I'm a survivor. They live with a lie that's comfortable. I live with the truth that sometimes hurts but heals. As I walked outside, an old lady called out to me. Are you Mrs. Hartman's granddaughter? I nodded. She was proud of you. Even when everyone said you were troubled. She always said, Lavinia is my truth. Not everyone likes her, but she's the real deal. I didn't answer. I just nodded. Because in that moment no words could say more. And then I smiled. Not to the world. To myself. Because when you know your truth, you don't stand at the door. You walk in. And you don't wait for someone to call you. I live my life differently now. Not loudly. No spite. Just quiet. I don't prove myself anymore. I don't wait for phone calls. I don't count who's been around. I know who's left. And that's enough. On Sunday I came to the old bus stop, where my grandmother and I stood in the rain when she forgot her umbrella. Then she laughed and said, if we're going to get wet, it's just the two of us. I looked up at the sky. It was gray just as it had been then, but it was clear. because now I knew I didn't have to be chosen. I had already been chosen. Silently, with my heart, I got up and walked away, without turning around. Not because of the pain behind me, it's because I'm in front. Family isn't the kind that shares a last name with you. It's the one that remembers when you're hurting. And if you once stayed in a room where everyone else left, that's not defeat. It's a cleansing. And memory, it doesn't ask for permission. It stays.